The Penn State turmoil continues. I wouldn't want to be their athletic director right now.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Zach Sako of Locked On Nittany Lions. Same network. How about that? We have similar show titles, same network. Who could have thought? He's here to discuss one mad coaching situation. There's another crazy one that got resolved in the opposite fashion in Kansas State. And we'll look at the Big Ten championship game as well, because football is happening. How about that? This episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Sako, I'll throw it to you because I keep watching this, and boy, Pat Kraft is Lucy and Penn State fans are Charlie Brown with the football. All right, here we go. We're going to no, we're not. Okay, this time we're going to hire the coach. This time, no, we're not. That's how it feels to me. What do you think? You're close to it.
It's been a mess. It's been terrible at this point. I guess this is what people were warning about, or with saying you'll regret firing James Franklin, because I never thought it would get to this. Partially because it's twofold. It's a double-ended sword. One, those elite of elite prospects didn't want to leave their respective programs, which makes a ton of sense. Marcus Freeman's pretty comfortable at Notre Dame. Lincoln Riley's comfortable at USC. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, maybe not as comfortable, but still comfortable enough to not leave Alabama, right? Mike Elko, Texas A&M. We went through all of this originally, right? But the home run swings that Pat Kraft went after. But also in the process, he alienated that second, third tier of candidates with what we're gathering. People will mistake this and say that, oh, nobody wanted the Penn State coaching job. No, I think that Penn State was a little too picky in this coaching search. Pat Kraft was a little bit too picky in this coaching search, because they could have had Brian Hartline. Never offered him, at least is what we've gathered. They were not too high on Will Stein, Oregon offensive coordinator. They said he wasn't polished enough. They thought he was a little too raw to be a head coach. Oh, crazy, right? Since he would have been a first-time head coach. But it worked out with Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day once upon a time, right? People forget that he was a coordinator turned head coach for the first time at Ohio State. So it's Pat Kraft, in a way, sabotaging the Penn State coaching search, while Penn State also striking out on all of its candidates. And then Pat Kraft pushing all the chips into the middle of the table and saying, we're going to go to war with BYU. We're going to go get Kalani Sitake, who literally bleeds BYU. He is BYU through and through. It's a smart idea to put all of our chips in the middle of the table here. I don't care, handshake agreement, anything like that. You had to have known the risk you were taking by putting everything on the table for Sitake and trying to get him away from BYU. I don't care what was verbally agreed to or what the understanding was. It embarrassed Penn State. It made Penn State look bad. And it also diminishes what coach is going to want the job now after all of this had happened, because everybody's just frustrated over here.
Yeah, frustration is the most understandable emotion if you're a Penn State fan, because, man, you punted on the season, which was over once you lost to UCLA and Northwestern. You said, all right, we're done. We're scrapping. We're going down. We've got to go in a new direction. And to be here in early December, National Signing Day has come and gone. You've got the transfer portal window in early January. Who knows what's going to happen by then? I hope Penn State would have a head coach by that point in time.
Who knows? Maybe not.
I don't know. Because the whole intention of firing James Franklin when you did is that you could go out and get the best candidates. And then the game of musical chairs is being played, and there's none left for Penn State. And you're like, wait a minute. You showed up to this party way before everybody else. How did you not know that we were starting the game? How did you admit? What were you doing? Who were you talking to? How did you get that distracted to where you are in this just calamitous situation for the Nittany Lions? And I saw a report flying around they might just hire the interim head coach Do you buy that?
Well, yeah, because it's what we're down to as we sit here and have this conversation, because it continues to change so much. Because
Oh my gosh.
when I was getting alerts, it was, we're at DEFCON 5. Kalani Sitake is going to be the next head coach at Penn State. And I said, you know what? I don't buy it. I don't buy it, because this happened with Kalen DeBoer just a few days ago. This happened with whatever. Insert a big name coaching candidate that is off the wall is trending towards Penn State. And I said, you know what? I don't care until I see an actual alert from On3 24/7 saying that the deal is finalized and he will be the next head coach, not even a primary target. I'm not buying it. I'm not believing it. But as we stand right now, as we sit here right now and have this conversation, it is either Brian Daboll or the interim head coach and Terry Smith, allegedly, right? That's where it stands right now. The ex-New York Giants head coach or Terry Smith. And there's a split right now between the Penn State dynamic. Some people want Brian Daboll, including the athletic director, Pat Kraft. The other half says, let's just go with the interim. Let's just go with Terry Smith. He proved something, right? He wasn't completely abysmal taking over for James Franklin. He actually showed that he can lead the team. The players want him. Coaches want him. Letterman want him. A half of the donors want him, give or take. There are donors that are willing to line up and support him. He played for Penn State. He's an alum. You want to talk about Kalani Sitake and what he means to BYU. Terry Smith would have that potential for Penn State in theory.
Man,
but that's where, and then there's this alleged wild card that this is all another smoke screen, that Pat Kraft has another trick up his sleeve, and it's under wraps, and they're strategically waiting until after conference championship weekend. So as it sits here right now, it is either Daboll or Smith as far as I'm concerned.
So for those who are unaware, let me give you a list of places in his football career Brian Daboll has worked. William and Mary, 2 years at Michigan State. That was 1 and 2 years respectively after I was born. Then it was New England Patriots, New York Jets, Browns, Dolphins, Chiefs, Patriots, Alabama for 1 year, Bills, and Giants.
National title year. They won a national title that year with Alabama.
Oh, okay.
He was the OC. He helped develop Josh Allen. I'm not totally against Brian Daboll, but at this point in time, you're clearly
here's the thing.
Saying, go ahead.
Daboll would be a risk because of his relative lack of experience in college football. He has not been at a place in college for multiple years in this century working as a coach.
Yeah.
So you're going to throw someone in who you might like his football acumen and IQ. Okay, I can understand that. He's a one-time NFL Coach of the Year. Sure, you might like him as an X's and O's guy. How is he running a college program? You have no idea. Absolutely none. How is he recruiting? How's he going to handle the transfer portal? What are his relationships with donors and boosters going to be like? How does he connect with college fans compared to the NFL, where that's not as big of a responsibility? None of those things are known, and you're going to potentially make that your head coaching move after you fired your coach early to the middle part of the season so that you could get ahead. This feels like a fallback option more than anything else. And man, it is shocking. It is shocking how hard Pat Kraft has fumbled this.
I mean, that's just it. Like I said, it was a double-ended sword. The understanding is that he was too focused on the big name candidates and trying to pull them away from pretty stable programs, or taking a lucky chance that Kalen DeBoer in Alabama were just going to fall on their faces. And maybe that's the thing again, that there are people trying to allude to the fact that, and prominent people, Tim Brando is a national broadcaster, CBS, and he's still alluding to the fact that, hey, Kalen DeBoer in Alabama just aren't comfortable. So is Penn State waiting on that still? Because at least over here locally, the powers that be at Penn State were very confident that they could capitalize on an Alabama Kalen DeBoer disaster class. So are they just hoping for one last Hail Mary that, hey, maybe it happens after the SEC championship game? Maybe that we get lucky and they aren't included in the college football playoff. What would that mean for Alabama? Would they push him out if they miss the playoff? I'm not saying it's guaranteed to happen, but I'm trying to get an understanding of, okay, we just sat here. Brian Daboll, not that great of a candidate overall. I like him. I'm willing to risk. Where are we right now, Spencer? Right? I really don't think there's any shame in taking a chance on Daboll, who has Northeast connections, proven that he can develop quarterback talent. Josh Allen, he can run good offenses. And I say you put the other pieces in place to help him with recruiting, NIL. You don't make him do that. Are you making Bill Belichick at North Carolina go negotiate NIL deals? No, you're not. You're letting him coach football.
Yeah, well, that's an option. Let me just throw this out there just to stir the pot a little for fun. Jed Fish's contract at Washington remains the same. As we record this segment, unless I'm missing something, there has not been a new extension there.
Maybe he gets a raise. Everybody else is looking for one.
Yeah, probably. Penn State hasn't handled this well. Kansas State has. Look, it's Christian Rauh of Locked On Kansas State. He will be here to talk about what just happened in Manhattan. First, this episode brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. A family friend of mine has one of these, and they are fantastic. They look great in any kind of room, and the ability to just relive those moments over and over again and have more than one in a picture frame, it's really great. And if you want to have that sort of connection with a gift that you're giving to someone this holiday season, Aura Frames is the way to go. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com. Promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us, that'd be Locked On, of course, at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Check out Aura Frames for your holiday gift today. This is how you handle a coaching search. Chris Klieman retires, and we're all caught off guard because, wait, just because they didn't have the season they were hoping for, he's leaving? He's only 58. What do you mean he's 8 years older than Lane Kiffin? What are you talking about? Oh, look at that. Collin Klein will be the next head coach in Manhattan. Christian Rauh, Locked On Wildcats, here to discuss. Well, that was fast. I mean, boy, that was like an old Geico commercial. So easy, a caveman could do it, you know? Like, it was just, woo, that was it. Penn State fans have to look at what Kansas State just did and be thinking to themselves, how'd you do that? How did you do that?
Yeah, following this one in the second segment, talking about how Penn State's having the longest coaching search ever,
Yeah.
and then Kansas State has what might be historically the quickest coaching search ever in this new NIL transfer portal world. This is exciting for Kansas State. Obviously, Chris Klieman, what he's done for the program for over the last 7 years has been very good as well. 6-6, not the best year. Of course, the last couple of games, you could start to see there's a little bit of exhaustion happening with Chris Klieman. He put out in the official statement that there's multiple reasons why he's stepping away. He mentioned his personal health. He mentioned he wanted to spend more time with his family. And then our athletic director, Gene Taylor, mentioned that the reason that he's stepping away is because of this new world of NIL and rev sharing, that nobody is following the rules, and he's sick of it. Sounds kind of familiar. We've heard this with other legendary coaches in the past.
You mean like Mike Gundy? I mean, little different context, but same energy of I don't want to deal with this sort of stuff. So does that make you think that at Kansas State, they're behind other schools in the Big 12? I don't think you have the depth of heavy hitters financially in the Big 12 as you do in some other conferences. You think about the Big 10, you've got Ohio State, and you've got Michigan who can give big money, and you've got Oregon, and Penn State and you've got USC. You go down, and in the Big 12, it's very clear right now to me who those two schools are. It's Texas Tech and BYU. And what do you know? Those schools are playing in the Big 12 championship game later this weekend. So is Kansas State just feeling like they're a second-tier NIL transfer portal caliber sort of program, and that's part of the reason Chris Klieman's going, with all the other factors, I don't feel like I can get to that level?
The narrative was kind of leading that way last couple of weeks, and you'd hear from Chris Klieman in his press conference. He would talk about how money is the only reason why teams are succeeding right now, and until we get some sort of grasp and control,
which I do
on
not
it,
agree with, by the way. But continue.
I'm with you. I think that there's a lot more to it, but there's been a lot of cop-outs and a lot of excuses happening with Kansas State this year, dare I say. And I know that's probably not the best way to say it, but there's been talking about injuries being the reason why you've lost football games. And then they turn into the fact, well, we haven't spent enough money. Some of it is to light a fire under the donors, and obviously bringing back a guy like Collin Klein should do that. He has to do anything he possibly can to get the donors, because there's not oil guys coming out of the woodwork in Kansas State to make that happen. There's not cookie company CEOs coming out of Kansas State, other than other Big 12 schools that are doing right now. You have to find a way to get these donors to step up. And with a legacy guy like Collin Klein, who has a great reputation at Kansas State, Heisman Trophy runner-up, was an offensive coordinator for Kansas State during that Big 12 championship run. When he was the offensive coordinator, they were top 25 offenses in the country both years. So there's a lot of really good things to look forward to. And I think there was just some exhaustion on the Chris Klieman side.
How do you think they got this done with Collin Klein so quickly, who, as you mentioned, up-and-coming offensive mind, the production, he's an alum. I feel kind of old, honestly. I remember very vividly watching him play against Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl back in that 2012 season, and all of a sudden he's the head coach of a Power 4 program, and this was so unexpected, but it happened so fast. And that's what makes the Penn State debacle so much more puzzling. That Penn State is a much bigger and better football brand than Kansas State. Not that Kansas State's a bad one, but Penn State is much bigger in that regard, is a much more attractive job. They play in a better conference, got more money, and they're getting this done quickly. And Michigan State is in the same league as Penn State, and they turned around, boom, Pat Fitzgerald, right as Jonathan Smith is shown the door and had his key card privileges revoked. I just continue to be befuddled at how Penn State can't find a coach, and that they could wind up hiring the interim. Like that's insane. But I want to therefore give credit to Kansas State where it's obviously due, because, well, I guess it's not as easy as it always looks. And there was no rumors, speculation. You had nothing to talk about on your show for days at a time. Seiko is probably mentally exhausted with all this stuff. He's just going, man, could they just make a hire? You were like, all right, I get to cover a coach. Oh, it's over already, huh? Wow, that was quick.
It was very quick. I think there was a tweet, and then there was a quote tweet 5 minutes later saying that, hey, by the way, this is the replacement. And don't get me wrong, it's the perfect candidate. It's the one that should be the guy, the A+ hire. It's not settling for anything. It's the right guy for the job in Collin Klein to fit the shoes. Chris Klieman had some big shoes to fill, replacing Bill Snyder, and I think he did a really dang good job doing it. He's going to be seen as the second best coach in Kansas State football history. That's not a bad thing to sit on the podium and second place for. Bill Snyder is one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I think he's done a great job being seen as the second best, and not just for wins, for what he's done with the program. He's brought it into this new era of NIL, transfer portal, all that stuff, and I think he's done it with some sort of progression and some sort of momentum, although it started to stall this year. Maybe you blame Dublin. Maybe you blame Avery Johnson's parents fighting in the parking lot, Dylan Edwards leaving the program. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could point your finger at to why exhaustion happened with Chris Klieman. But with Collin Klein this year, I think it's a perfect opportunity for him to go back to these donors. As we mentioned, that's going to be the biggest thing for them to take that next step forward when you're trying to battle those BYUs and Texas Techs and other major schools inside college football. And get them back on board. I think some of them fell off over the last couple of years, especially this season. You bring in a guy like Collin Klein, and they might come crawling back very fast.
Avery Johnson's still got 1 year of eligibility left, correct?
He does, and guess who recruited him?
Collin Klein.
Yeah.
Does anybody benefit more from this hire potentially than Avery Johnson? Because his potential is immense. I think everybody's aware of that. The production, though, wasn't where it needed to be this season, wasn't where folks like myself thought it would be. Kansas State finishes with 6 wins. I thought they would have 10. I thought this would be an opportunity for Avery Johnson in the same offensive system with some solid returning pieces on the perimeter and what should have been one of the best run games in the Big 12. I thought this was maybe a dark horse Heisman sort of season. But now with Collin Klein there, boy, I don't think Collin Klein has to adjust his system or his play sheet. He's just got to get there, handle the administrative duties, and implement his offense and say, I'm going from Marcel Reed to Avery Johnson. They might look different because one is 5'11 and one is 6'12", it feels like. And yes, I'm aware that's how many inches are in a foot. Mm-hmm. I think that their skill set is so similar that it's just copy-paste.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that this is, you're right. I think the person that benefits the most off it, to get your answer, yes, is Avery Johnson. I think it also is Avery Johnson because he's going to return. I think there's a really good shot that he will not enter the transfer portal, but also the surrounding pieces around him will also return. That was a huge question that I had over this beginning of the week, because again, we had no hearing, no rumblings of this happening. So just days before, 2 days before, I talked about how I thought there was no momentum in this program right now, where last year you had this type of narrative where you could at least say, we at least started 7-1 last year. Yeah, the season ended badly, but we at least can prove that we have what it takes to be a Big 12 contender. You didn't have that this year with the loss in Dublin against Iowa State, with the loss to Army, with almost a loss to an FCS school. You would have had nothing to hang your hat on with Chris Klieman this offseason, going into trying to keep these players out of the portal. And Avery Johnson, Jace Brown, Lincoln Cure, Austin Romaine. You would have to really push hard. Now that you bring Collin Klein in, a guy who is a quarterback genius, a guy who is fantastic on the offensive side. We've seen what he's doing at Texas A&M. He proved he can do it in the Big 12 as well just a few years ago with some of these players that are still on this roster, Avery Johnson included, although he wasn't the starter at the time. There's just a lot of really good things to look forward to. And I think, dare I say, that you could, if the retention happens for Kansas State, you could put them right back in the picture of being a Big 12 contender again in 2026.
I don't think that's crazy whatsoever. You got to keep probably all but one of those guys at least, if not all of them. But man, if you do, maybe you bring a couple of reserves that are capable of playing for you from Texas A&M. There's a lot of talent on that Texas A&M roster. Some of it's going to go with them, right? It's just a matter of who and what can those guys be. Christian Rauh, Locked On Kansas State, is always great with the most opposite coaching search. I've never seen a greater separation of styles for the same task in college football. But here we are. That's where we are. We're also coming up on the Big Ten championship game. Jacob Goins and I get you ready for that. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NFL Sundays, they move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, everything. It's all there on FanDuel. Point spreads, money lines, point totals, live bets, prop bets, everything you could want. FanDuel's got you covered. For the NFL, and yes, for college football too. So tomorrow, I'll have my final 5-game slate for a single week best bet segment. And you know what? It just hasn't been the year that I was hoping for. If I'd faded myself every single week, I'd be in a good spot. Alas, that's not where we're at. But ever determined, I will have my best bets. And if you think I'm staying cold, well, then maybe, just maybe, you want to go fade the picks at FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season with college football or otherwise, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Earlier this week, caught up with my guy Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Man, there's so many interesting aspects to this Big Ten championship game, including this part of it.
Well, it's one of the biggest weekends of the year in college football season, and while most people's teams aren't playing, the Indiana Hoosiers are. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football, and man, championship weekend is here, Spencer. Can you believe it? It's the Indiana Hoosiers and the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's number 2 versus number 1 in downtown Indianapolis, man. Does it get any better than this, especially since those mighty Oregon Ducks aren't here?
Yes, actually, it does get much better than this. I'm not even going to take the Oregon angle. I'm going to take the neutral arbiter of all things college football angle. Okay. Jacob, has there ever been a conference championship game with lower stakes than this?
Yeah.
I'm legitimately
you
asking.
Can't say that though. Don't poo-poo on the Big Ten championship game now, Spencer. It's a big
Watch
deal.
Watch me,
big
Jacob.
Deal. Whew, you better be ready. I made some people mad the other day.
Here's an honest look at it. Because of the opponent, it is arguably the biggest game in Indiana football history.
Yes.
Win or lose, it is going to immediately become the second biggest game in Indiana history because the biggest game will be the college football playoff game. When they will have an actual chance to win regardless of who they're playing. Now, again, even if they beat Ohio State, it's not, I don't even think as much about winning the Big Ten championship in the statement that makes as it is they beat Ohio State in Curt Cignetti's second year.
Yeah.
This is the SEC equivalent of my guy Will Stein goes to Kentucky, and next year Kentucky is ranked in the top 5 of college football and is beating Georgia in the SEC title game. That's the equivalent. That's what it is. Like, we've gotten so used to Indiana being good because Curt Cignetti has normalized it so quickly. We have just completely forgotten that 2 years ago, no one cared about Indiana football. It never came up on my show. I never paid any attention to them. No one gave a rat's rear end about them because they were an irrelevant program. And now they're just the opposite of that. This is one of the most rapid ascensions and brand transformations in the history of college football.
And it needs to be celebrated as such. And with the Big Ten title game, we're going to talk about some college football playoff stuff with the final rankings coming out on Sunday. We'll see what those look like, barring the result of this game. But I'm glad you took that angle, Spencer, because do you expect Indiana from the outside in your college football perspective, right? Do you expect Indiana to play that way, to be fired up, to give it everything they've got, 150% to win this game in comparison to Ohio State, who's been here X a number of times where it doesn't really matter as much to the Buckeyes? Do you expect it to be that, or two of the best teams in college football are just going to go at it for 4
I think two of the best teams in college football are going at it. You know, Ohio State looks so mission-oriented and locked in.
Sure.
I think Ohio State could win any type of football game against any team in any weather conditions, any time of day. Ryan Day, as crazy as this sounds, would be on a short list for me for National Coaches of the Year. So would Curt Cignetti, just to be clear. But Ryan Day returned less than half of his roster from a year ago. Brand new quarterback. Ask Steve Sarkisian how easy it is to just work in a 5-star quarterback that's been sitting in your system for a year or two.
Let me speak for the Indiana fans and say it must be difficult to win with a 5-star here and a 5-star there and a backup 5-star, and the fourth string is a 4.5-star who had to walk on because there weren't enough scholarships. I understand exactly where you're going, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's done an incredible job. He had to replace 2 coordinators and over half of his production from last year, and his team looks better? What about that makes any sense other than the fact that Ryan Day, who a year ago at this time, a lot of folks in Columbus wanted fired.
And I think he would have been if they lose that Tennessee game.
Or if the playoff doesn't get expanded, Ryan Day is not Ohio State's head coach.
Which is such a wild fact. And now he's coming off a win against Michigan in the snow on the road, and here they are.
And he's the highest paid coach in college football, I'm pretty sure. And he should be.
Is he still the highest paid after the Lane Kiffin contract?
That's a good question.
Kiffin's got like $12 million at LSU? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are both up there, but Ryan Day is the best head coach in college football right now. I think a lot of folks would say Kirby Smart. It's not a bad answer.
Yeah.
It's not a bad answer. I watch Ohio State all season. I've watched Georgia all season. I know which team I think is better. And Georgia, I think Georgia's good. They've made some real progress. Ohio State has got no holes, no weaknesses, nothing. They're just really, really good. So from a big picture standpoint, if Indiana loses, they're still going to have a bye. I don't think anything changes that. I really don't. Because if you lose to Ohio State, what, are we punishing you in a big way for that? By the way, even if they were to drop 3 spots down to number 5, Oh no, a home playoff game in Bloomington.
But it's an extra playoff game. It's an extra game.
It is.
That's
It
not
is
necessary.
against a group of 5 team who Indiana might beat 70-4.
You're right.
I don't know how they'd
You're
get 2 safeties. That was a dumb number to pick. I should have just said 3.
I mean, same. It's a G5 team, man. They play weird,
Yeah, but I think that this is certainly a great opportunity for Indiana. But of all the conference championship games, the lowest stakes. Because
the 2 top teams in the country.
Yeah, I know. And that's what the expanded playoff does for it. Now, if it were a 4 team, it would also have the same stakes, to be fair. Because if you had a 4-team playoff, Indiana or Ohio State, neither one should be left out at 12-1. Absolutely not. So, and certainly in a 12-team. But anyway, the opportunity for Indiana is, I think, to prove to themselves and the rest of college football what Curt Cignetti talked about recently, which was, hey, Ohio State recruits really well. Man, they have a lot of really good players, and we're not there yet. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. Boy, you make a heck of a statement if you just beat Ohio State. If Indiana wins this game but does not win the national championship, which I think is possible, which is crazy, but it's very possible. If that's how it goes, I think that would put their program in a better position than if they lose this game, but let's say make it to the national championship game and lose. Obviously, winning the Natty is the premier goal for everyone. Nothing benefits your program like that. But of all the outcomes, does the point I'm making, is that coming across? Like,
yes. Is it because it's winning a Big Ten title, winning a ring, hanging a banner, or is it beating Ohio State?
It's beating Ohio State. If you were playing Penn State or even Oregon in this spot, the Oregon game, you and I talked about it, that's probably the biggest win to date in the history of Indiana football.
On the road in Eugene, absolutely.
Yeah, that's no small thing. Game day in town in Eugene, man, that was an incredibly strong performance. And I think that if they win this Ohio State game and then they can say they're Big Ten champions, I think that's kind of icing on the cake, because it's just the brand of you're playing Ohio State. You're in year 2 at Indiana. Man, no one, not even the most red-hearted, bleeding, soul on the chest Indiana fan could have possibly thought when Curt Cignetti got hired, dude's going to take us to the playoff 2 years in a row. You would have been laughed at, and yet you would have been right. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.